Greetings and welcome to a presentation of the Adrian Dominican Sisters of a Sister Story. I am Sister Peg O'Flynn, and I am delighted to welcome our Sister Susan Gardner, who formerly known as Sister Christi. Sue, that's for people that don't know who you are now, that only knew you then when you were teaching. Now, Sue is presently in ministry in Suttons Bay, Michigan. For those of you unfamiliar with where that is, she'll be happy to explain it as she begins her story. So Sue, again, we want to know a little bit more about you. So perhaps you could start at the beginning of your life, back where you were born, and schooling, and what led you to become an Adrian Dominican sister. And then you've had many ministries, but one in particular that you'd like to focus on. Okay, so I'll kind of let you lead the way, but I promise I'll probably interrupt at times. Okay. All right, so it's all yours, Sue. Thank you.
Okay. I was born on the south side of Chicago, and I had one brother who is 11 years older than I am. And for fun, our families loved to watch movies. We went to the movie theater a lot. And then in fourth grade, I started going to my aunt's farm, and I loved being up there and being outdoors. I went to St. Albie's School and was taught by the Nashville Dominicans. And I absolutely loved those sisters. And from second grade on, I knew I wanted to be a sister.
Sue, let me just, I told you I'd interrupt. We just had a gathering in Ann Arbor with the sisters who I think they started out in Nashville, but then they broke off, but
right.
With their community. Wonderful, wonderful group of women. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Good. Yes. Yes. But I just loved them and spent as much time as I could with them. And when I graduated 8th grade, they had to go back to Nashville because they were a small community.
Right.
Our parish had a huge picnic for them, and I cried all the way home. I was so upset. And I always went to 6:30 Mass, and to see the Adrians march into church and sit where the Nashville Dominicans used to be was very difficult. But then an hour and a half later, I'd be at Aquinas loving the Adrians. So it was really, really funny. And in this order, myself, Kathy Klingon, and Mary Beth Howell, we all graduated from Albie's. We also are the last three who graduated from Aquinas and who are in the community.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
Very good.
Yes. So I really, really loved them a lot and contribute, they certainly nurtured my vocation.
Very good. But started with the Nashville Dominicans. That's interesting.
Right. And we're a Polish family, so we always had great get-togethers for baptisms and communions and graduations, and everybody would bring food, and then the women would clean up and talk, and the men would play pinochle, and the kids would go outside and play. So,
right.
Yes,
a real sense of community. Mm-hmm.
Yes, I really loved all my relatives. And my brother had 3 children, 2 girls and a boy, and I babysat for them, and I babysat for all of their children. So I'm very close to them and to my great nieces and nephews.
So you could be a nanny when you retire.
You're right. Well, when I told people I was entering the convent, they were shocked because I did so much babysitting. I just loved it. So they like, oh, how can you not have children? You're such a big babysitter. But I said, well, I'll have children in the classroom.
So your vocation was nurtured at home, with your parents.
My father was furious that I was entering. He didn't talk to me the whole summer. But it was kind of fun because he wasn't saying, where are you going? What time are you going to be back? But so he was not happy. But, there were sisters in my crowd where their parents made them wait 2 years or a year. And he did not do that. And he always came to Adrian for the visits dressed in a suit.
Oh, really? Mm-hmm.
And when I was a novice, Rosemary said, the next time your parents come, I want to talk to them. And so, of course, she didn't tell me what she said. She just said, your mother cried the whole time. But I'm sure she gave my father a talking to about being so hard on me because he sort of calmed down after that.
His only girl, of course, your daughter. Yes.
Right. That's right.
What's the age difference between you and your brother?
11 years.
Yeah.
So I was really like an only child, you know.
Yes. Yes. Uh-huh.
But anyway, in the end, it all worked out because my mom died when I was 24.
Oh,
And so I, then spent a lot of time with my dad. So even though I thought, oh, why did my mom have to die? Again, in God's providence, it brought me closer to my dad. So,
is your dad still with us?
no, he died maybe 10 years ago. He died
Okay.
at 86.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And
So,
you had a good relationship with him then?
yes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yes. He still wouldn't admit it, but I knew he was proud of what I was doing.
And your brother?
He died of COVID before they had the vaccines. So that was
Really?
hard. As they said, not being able to be with the person who's dying. That was hard.
Oh my, I'm so sorry. Oh
Yeah.
my.
Thank
Just
you.
just a few years back then.
Right. Yeah. Right when it was starting that first summer. Yeah. So anyway, it's
Were
happened
you
ever.
were you in Sutton's Bay at the time?
Yes, I was.
Okay.
I was. Yeah.
Right. So then you entered and everything was fine. You had a good time. You had a large crowd.
Yes, 125.
Right,
And
right.
there's 11 of us.
I know. Can you believe it?
I know.
Yeah. Well, the women and Adrian in your crowd are rather close here right now.
Yes,
They get together a lot. Yeah.
that's great. That's
Yeah.
great.
Okay. So where was your first ministry? I think you were in Chicago. You were in Illinois at the beginning.
Well, I went to St. Thomas Aquinas in East Lansing,
Okay.
and then to St. Andrews in Rochester. And then I asked to come back to Chicago because my mom was dying, but she died before I came back. But anyway, then I went to St. Nicholas of Tallentine,
Okay.
and that's where I met Ellen. And of course, and that was 1970. So
Your friend. Okay.
yeah, so we've been friends for all these years. And when it says, people you looked up to, well, of course, Rosemary, because we were her first novices, and Ellen, who spent her entire life trying to keep me calm because I can get aggravated very easily, especially when it comes to dealing with our priests. So she spent her whole life keeping me calm, but she's just been a wonderful friend. And she came out of retirement to go up to Canada with me. And
That's right. She went with you. That's right. I forgot about
and
that.
she just loved being up there. So it
Tell
was
us about your ministry in Canada and how you got there.
when I was on my sabbatical, there was a letter from the bishop, asking if anybody would come and minister. So I called Donna, and she called the bishop, Sylvan LeBoy, and he came to Adrian and gave a presentation. And of course, at that time, our sisters were going to Alaska and other places, and they were going in twos. So I asked Ellen if she would be willing to go, and she said yes. So he had to come and see weekend for us. So we went up there,
Oh, okay.
then decided to do it. And we got there right after the Truth and Reconciliation program had started. So we were part of the 1,000,000 hours of service that each
Tell
night.
us, Sue, tell us what you mean by the reconciliation for those that are unfamiliar with it.
Okay, the bishops in Canada and the government finally decided that they would do reconciliation with the First Nation people. And in Canada, it's different. They elect one chief to represent them all. So he met, and the bishops met, and the government met, and they came up with a Truth and Reconciliation program. So the First Nation people got so much money for being sent to a boarding school. Then they got so much money for each year they were in the school. And then
who got the money?
The First people themselves.
Okay.
Yeah, they had to write down how many years they were there, and they got so much money for each year, which I can't remember what it was now. And then after that, they had to write down their stories of what happened to them, or record them if they couldn't write. And they went before a judge, and then the judge, after hearing what happened to them, again gave them more money. And for some, it was wonderful. There were two women who came from Winnipeg, pro bono, who met with the people and tried to get them, to put their money in banks, etc. but of course they weren't real trusting of that.
No.
So some of the tribes up there were wonderful. The tribal leaders took the money, invested it, and give it to the people when they need it. Our tribe did not do that. And so, like, there was a man who came every Saturday to clean church and get the wood stacked in the furnace for Sunday heat. And he came to church and he had a haircut, new glasses, new jacket, new gloves. He was so happy, and he bought a snowmobile. The next weekend, his niece went to his house, got him drunk. She got drunk. She took the snowmobile and totaled it and stole the rest of his money. So, and he just didn't want to press charges or do anything. So, like I say, some did very well with their money, putting it in banks, and others did not. They just went wild with it. Right now, they're in the second stage. So the Canadian bishops have written a letter of apology, and each bishop has written a letter of apology. And now they are putting out more money, but this time they will go to each tribe and find out what the tribe wants them to do. Do they want to send somebody there to help them relearn their language? Or do they want somebody sent there to help with alcoholism? Or do they want, them to send people to programs? So that's what they're doing this year. Unfortunately, the United States bishops have not done anything yet. And of course, when they found all those bodies in the school up in Canada, that of course very upset the people very much. We did have people picket in front of our church for maybe an hour and a half. And since then, I haven't heard anything. And here in Pishobi Town, I'm with the Odawa and Chippewa, the Grand Traverse Bay of Odawa and Chippewa. They're angry, but they haven't come forth with any stories. I keep asking, because that was one thing we learned to do we were in a 21 intensive day program to help people with their trauma. And so I've had 2 healing circles up in the Petoskey area, but not here yet. And Deb Holland, who's the Secretary of the Interior, is going throughout the country this year to meet. So she was up here in August, and she met with the people who went to Holy Childhood in Harbor Springs. And that's where all of these people, the people from our reserve, went. And they were there for 8 hours, and they told their stories. And of course, it was very emotional, and there were counselors there to help them. So she's going to spend the year going through. And so I sent the article to the bishop, and he says, well, should we go? And I said, no. I asked, and they said not to. But he did send the lady who's the chancellor for our diocese. Mm-hmm. The other thing, our bishop is new. We just got him in I don't know. He's just new. Right. Anyway, he's 56, and he's down to earth and just wonderful to the outdoors. So ever since I've been here, the people have been asking that the names of the natives who went to Holy Childhood be released, and nothing was ever done. So I had several conversations with our bishop and the chancellor, and he did send the chancellor to Holy Childhood. She brought back all the archives, and then she went through our archives. So in spring, he will release those names. And so we're going to meet and decide how to do this. We'll probably call in the 4 chiefs from the area.
So they wanted the names released of the children at home. Was that a boarding school?
Yes, it was. And that was a boarding school that the 4 tribes in Michigan went to.
Okay. Now, can you just, for those that might not have the history, the boarding school, we read quite a bit about it now. Tell me the boarding school history briefly.
Okay. Well, the children, of course, were taken from their homes.
Why?
Their parents, pardon me?
I just said why.
Well, because they wanted to take the Indian out of the Indian. So they
made them go to the boarding school.
Made them go to the boarding schools.
And who made them go there, though?
Pardon me?
Who made the children go there?
The government. And the government funded all the boarding schools in Canada. They also funded them here. But in Canada, it was the Oblate priests who ran them, and then some sisters with a French name, but they're called the Gray Sisters, and they led
Right.
them.
Uh-huh.
They refused to apologize when the other groups did. So, they would take them at 5, cut their hair. It's sort of like becoming a novice.
Right, right.
Cut their hair, and they couldn't talk to one another in their own language. They could have no contact with their brothers or sisters. And of course, like some of the boys, the abuse started the first night they got there when they were all forced to take showers. And, but the mental abuse was just terrible. And priests were very clever when they put them on the trains to go back home. They said, if you tell anybody what happened to you or what you saw happen to somebody else, the RCMP, the police, will come and take your parents away. So one of the ladies was with her dad when she was 7, and they were chopping wood and she was stacking it. And they heard somebody calling her dad's name, and she turned around and there was a RMCP. And so she started screaming and crying, Daddy, I didn't tell, I promise I didn't tell. And she hung onto his leg, and the man was just there to deliver a message. But, just the whole trauma of the things that happened to them was just horrific. One lady from Petoskey, she was visiting her dad, and he started crying. They were sitting together on the couch. She says, Dad, why are you crying? And he said, I'm sorry. And she says, what are you sorry for? And he just started sobbing and sobbing. And he said, I'm sorry I couldn't prevent you from going to the boarding school. So, and of course, boarding school, they didn't know how to parent. So they didn't know how to parent their children. They had no relationship with their brothers or sisters because they were kept apart for 9 months. And in the summer, the boys would hunt with the dads and the moms would work with the girls. So there was no sibling connection, and they did not know how to parent.
Traumatic,
Yes.
unbelievable. And
Yes.
how did they stop all of it?
Well, just finally they closed. They closed the schools. I don't really know why they closed them. I never asked.
Oh, thank God. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, with so much violence that's going on right now, Russia and Ukraine, and looking at remembering the Holocaust and all of that, what's different? It seems like we've been having this unsettledness, this abuse. It's horrible. So
Yes.
your ministry up in Suttons Bay is with the First Nations people, is that specifically? And it's chaplaincy, it's counseling?
Well, yes, I'm the director of parish life for St. Kateri Parish. So that means I do everything. And
So all people are there. It's not just First Nations people. It
used to be mainly First Nations, but
okay.
now and they're wonderful. They're wonderful to each other. We have brunch every Sunday after Mass. Mass is at 10. Sometimes I don't get back here till 1 because everybody stays and talks. But oh yeah. So like my favorite thing to do, it sounds weird, but is doing the funerals, because I meet with the families, I hear their stories, we choose readings, etc. And then if it's not a Mass, which most of them are not, then I preside over it. And we run groups and we have smudging, and the people are just so attentive in church. And it's just wonderful. And then we have a luncheon afterwards. So I've gotten to know a lot of the people and gained their trust, through this. So I do most of the funerals up here. There's a Protestant minister, but mostly they ask me to do them.
So your desire to work with the population of the First Nations, Native Americans, that's something you didn't always want to do. You just got interested through the invitation to go to Canada.
Well, not really. When I was in 4th grade,
oh my,
at my aunt's farm, we went into Stevens Point. And as we were going to the drugstore, there was this Native man sitting there. And at first I thought he was a statue because he was so still.
Yeah.
But when I came out, I just sort of stood in front of him and I could see a little twinkle in his eye and a little smile. And I thought, I want to know more about these people. And in high school, I wrote a paper about Native Americans. And then when I became a DRE, then I started reading about Native Americans and learning more and more. And everybody knew that after I went on sabbatical, I would work with the Native Americans.
Wonderful.
I always thought I'd be at Pine Ridge with a Lakota or at Wind River with the Arapaho. But when the bishop's letter came, I thought, well, why not? And so then when I was coming back here, then Bishop Hebda asked Barb Matovich if she could put a notice. So I got that notice, and then I came up here and interviewed with him, and then started here.
Wonderful.
So
Wonderful.
I'm responsible for the parish and then for the Native American apostolate in the diocese with the 4 towns.
Is it a large parish?
No, it's mostly elders. I would say there's probably 150 people.
Yeah.
So
It's a beautiful area.
oh, it is. It is.
Yeah.
Yes.
One of these days, I'm going to get up there.
Good. Hope so.
Yeah.
I hope so.
I just am more interested in that right now. Is there try to sum some of this up? Is there a certain lesson you've learned in your lifetime about yourself that you'd like to share with us that maybe we could think about regarding ourselves? Or
well, I think I've learned to just take things a day at a time.
That's great. Yeah.
And that's very hard for me. I'm a 1 on the Enneagram, so I like everything perfect. And so when I do a funeral and everything, I have everything planned, and the people have everything they need. And so the hardest thing was then to let it go and not worry about it, because I knew I had done everything I possibly could. So that's been one thing, and the fact that I never ever dreamed that I would be working with elderly people, because I had always loved children so much, So, but everybody, like I say, is up here. We have, excuse me, have had some baptisms and first communions, but it's an elderly group.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's great. That's great. So your heart is there.
Yes, definitely.
What do you do for downtime?
My favorite thing.
Re-energize.
My favorite thing is to spend the day at the beach swimming and reading, but of course I can only do that for 3 months. But I like to read mystery stories. Nancy Ann Turner sent me a book by Margaret Cole, and she writes all her mysteries are Native Americans. They take place on the home reservation. So I've read all of hers. I've read all of Tony Hillerman, which take place up in Navajo. And now I'm reading his daughters, who's continued his legacy. Mm-hmm. So I just love reading the mysteries, and Margaret Cole always bases things on something that was really happened. So you learned besides, having a wonderful story.
If you were given the chance to go on a trip, visit any place you wanted, where would you want to go at this time of your life?
I'd say back to Yosemite National Park.
Oh, okay.
Me, it is just speaks of the wonder and awe of God. It is just a sacred, beautiful place. So I really just loved being there. We went there twice. The first time Ellen and I camped, and then the second time we just went back, because when we were there camping, the upper road was still covered with snow, so you couldn't go up. So we wanted to go up to the top and look down on the valley. And we've been to 28 national parks. So that's my favorite thing, is to be out in nature.
You do take time to re-energize.
Oh, yes.
Good.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I love fun.
That's good. That's good. So that, what's the favorite scripture saying, perhaps?
Well, this actually was Sister Dorothy Fires said I should pay attention to this when I was a very young sister. And it was, the lilies of the field, they don't sow or whatever, and the birds of the air. And, worrying about tomorrow doesn't make any difference, because you can't do anything by worrying. So I like that one. And I've remembered that my whole life, again, because I am such a perfectionist on things. And every May, the trillium all come up in the woods around my house. And, I think they're under all those leaves and under the ton of snow. And yet every May they come out, and they're just so beautiful. They only last for a week. So it always reminds me of that passage too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, you are just so full of energy. Is there anything else that maybe you want to share with us before we bring this to a close? That would be important for us to know.
I would just say that as I went from parish to parish and ministry to ministry and look back, I can always see how it was the Spirit working, and how when I was ending something, another thing just opened up. So I I can see that. And I thought this line on the bottom, where might the Spirit be leading you? And I
Yes.
thought, retirement.
I can't see, well, however you want to spend it, you'd go traveling. Okay.
Right. But not now. I mean, I'll stay here as long as I'm healthy and can do it, and they want me here.
Well, and maybe it's not while you're still healthy. Maybe you'll know when to let go, because you need
Right.
your health to, energize yourself to travel around.
That's true. True.
Right. Right. So I was in Adrian in experience when you were there 3 or 4 years ago, and you had that service.
Oh, yeah.
Was for those of us like myself that haven't had that experience, it was very meaningful. And how important the culture is.
Yes.
How important it is for all of us to touch into our tradition and our culture. So
That's right.
thank you for bringing that to us. And again, I thank you for your faithfulness to the ministry and to the call that you've had at different times in your life. Now, how did you get that name, Sister Christa? Christi?
Yes, my nephew's name was Christopher, and my niece was Mary. So at first I wanted Robert Christi to try and appease my dad, but that was already taken.
He loves you. Yeah. Yeah.
So I went with Mary Christi. And one last little thing I'd like to share. I was at a spring assembly, and Sister Alice Van Acker came up to me and she goes, I was at our parish fish fry, and I told them I was an Adrian. And this lady, Judy, said, do you know Sue Gardner? And she says, yes, and I'm seeing her tomorrow. And she said, she wants you to call her. She said, you were the best babysitter ever. I called her, and I learned about all the kids. And she said to me, we were all so proud that you became an Adrian Dominican sister. And nobody had ever said that to me in my whole life. So I was, my goodness, that this person comes out of nowhere, that I babysat for when I was 8th grade in high school.
So awesome. We certainly never know the depths of the preaching we each have done in our various lifestyle and our various ministries. So you certainly exude an energy and a love of God and the Spirit. So may you continue.
Thank you.
You know when to continue, and may you know when the best time is to let go. So
right.
You and Ellen can continue to have some fun together.
Yes. Yes.
So thank you ever so much, Sue, and the congregation thanks you for the ministry in which you are involved. And peace be with you, and God bless you for the work you're doing with the First Nations people.